Good afternoon. Today we will continue to study about the determiner what, which is applied as a subordinating conjunction. We've studied about the determiner what in the 6th chapter. In that chapter, we've studied about the interrogatives. And the determiner what was one of the interrogatives. So we admit that the determiner what to link the subordinate clause to the main clause with a noun or a pronoun derives from the interrogative determiner what. From this admission, we will consider the basic premise to apply the determiner what in the subordinate clause, while as we've done to the application of the determiner what as the interrogative. So we can review what was the premise for applying the determiner what as an interrogative, and it was about the fact that the object or subject described by the determiner what is not a person. In this sentence, we find that the object described by the determiner what is not a person. And let's analyze the sentence while reading this explanation. The second example that we study for the determiner what is this: what advice in the Lord you gave me saves me. The speaker indicates the subject of the transitive verb saves in the main clause. Saves in the main clause. With the subordinate clause, what advice in the Lord you gave me. So we can say that the subject of the main clause is indicated by the subordinate clause from here to here. And the phrase of the noun, what advice, including the determiner what in the subordinate clause, is the direct object in the subordinate clause, because the subject of the subordinate clause are the listeners, and the transitive verb gave describes the listeners. The personal pronoun me as the object, as the indirect object, is the final destination or final destination for the direct object from the subject. So we can find that the subordinate clause is stated in the fourth type of clause as well. The speaker indicates the direct object that is conveyed from the listeners as the subject to the indirect object me with the definition of the transitive verb gave with the phrase of the noun what advice to include the interrogative determiner applied as the subordinating conjunction. As the noun advice is described by the determiner what applied in the phrase of the subordinating conjunction, so the indicated object is not a person. That's obvious from the definition of the word advice and from the premise to apply the determiner what. we've reviewed that the determiner what originates from the interrogative. So we can say that the subordinate clause can be analyzed from the clause before being integrated into the sentence as the and the second clause, including the subject, the advice, and transitive verb saves, might become the main clause, and the speaker does not have any inquisitive intent on in the direct object of this interrogative clause. So the speaker finds the shared indication in both clauses. The speaker finds out that the direct object in the first interrogative clause is the same object as the subject of the second clause, and the speaker replaces the subject of the main clause, of the second clause to be the main clause, into the entire first clause that became the declarative statement. That's how the second example sentence is stated. Let's read the explanation. The speaker links the interrogative clause transformed into the declarative clause to the main clause as the subordinate clause, because the direct object indicated by the phrase of the noun what advice corresponds with the subject indicated by the phrase of the noun the advice. The third example that the determiner what is applied is this. What can you have matters. In this sentence, we find that the subject of the intransitive verb matters is indicated by the subordinate clause. What can you have? In other words, we can say that the subject of the main clause is indicated by the subordinate clause. And let's look into the subordinate clause. In the subordinate clause, what can you have? We find that the determiner what and the object cap forming a phrase of the general noun what cap. And this phrase of the general noun what cap is the object of the transitive verb have in the subordinate clause and links the subordinate clause to the main clause. We can guess that the two clauses before being integrated into this sentence might be like these ones, like what cap do you have? And the cap matters. The speaker finds out that the phrase of the general noun what cap and the subject of the second clause, the cap, are the shared indication, so the speaker might link the two clauses into the third example like this. Let's read the explanation together. The speaker indicates the subject of the intransitive verb matters in the main clause with the subordinate clause what can you have. The object indicated by the phrase of the subordinated conjunction what cap in the subordinate clause is conveyed. The definition of the transitive verb have from the listeners as the subject. The object receives the definition of the transitive verb have from the subject. As a noun, cap is described by the determiner what in the phrase of the subordinating conjunction. What cap? The listeners can understand that the noun cap indicates an object that is not a person. This is obvious from the definition of the noun cap and the premise to apply the determiner what. As we've analyzed, we can separate the integrated sentence, the third sentence, into the two clauses. The first one is the interrogative with the determiner what, and the second one is the declarative statement with the shared indication as the first clause. The speaker links the two clauses by finding the shared indication, what cap, and the cap. The speaker abbreviates the subject of the main clause and replaces the subject of the main clause by the declarative statement originates from this interrogative clause. That's how the third example is stated. Let's read the explanation together. The speaker links the interrogative clause transformed into the declarative clause to the main clause as the subordinate clause because the object of the transitive verb have indicated by the phrase of the noun what cap corresponds with the subject of the intransitive verb matters, the cap, indicated by the phrase of the noun the cap. This means that the speaker links the two clauses by finding out the shared indication of what cap and the cap. In the next class, we will study about the determiner which.